Yes, thank you, Robert, for giving this inspiring talk. Really good. Honor to meet you again, once again. And so let's plug the VGA back into this computer, I guess. Good. Okay, so my name's Steve Mann, and the title of my talk is Avacography with Glass Eyes. Avacography is a new word I made up, so... Now, I talk a little bit about nature and technology. This picture is from many years ago at one of the digital eyeglasses. And so digital eyeglass combines nature with technology, sort of the interplay between the natural world and the technological world. But anyway, so wearable computing. So when I was 4 years old, my grandfather taught me how to weld, and I was seeing the world through this dark glass. And I thought there must be a better way, instead of seeing this little speck of really bright white light on an almost completely black background. I couldn't understand what was going on. I said I wanted something that would help me see better. So I said, well, the eyeglass should help people see better. That's the fundamental purpose of the eyeglass, and then everything else can come on top of that. So this sort of Mann glass welding helmet that I started originally with evolved, by the 1980s, evolved into an internet-based computer with separate transmitting and receiving antennas. And so that I could, as I was walking around, I was connected to the network and could send and receive video, voice, text, data, and so on. I had this sort of wearable computing environment. That's my 1995 passport. This is about wearing computers in day-to-day life at all times, not just sometimes. And so that was a whole interesting discussion about whether that's a true and accurate picture of me, and we kind of went back and forth and said, yes, this is the true me. You know, it's not true and accurate if I have part of my body removed. It's 1999 is the system I'm wearing now that I finished 15 years ago. So there's a series of generations. And then the one on the right is this very sleek, slender frame I came up with. Just one piece of metal with no hinges that sweeps around the head in a curved arc. So, and of course that sweep around the head in the curved arc in the upper right, there's a product that looks kind of like that in the lower right-hand corner, about 14 years later. So WearCam AR Vision, augmented reality, consists of wearable camera, wearable computer, wearable display. So this design here, this again there, is based on the ITAP principle. It causes the eye itself to function as both a camera and a display. So back in the 70s, I created this Generation 1 glass with a little cute thing that you look up into off in one corner, and you could see this computer screen. I thought, that's great, I could see my computer screen while I was walking around. But then I thought, well, that's the wrong way to do it, just seeing this little notifier in the upper right-hand corner. Again, I said, well, what good are eyeglasses if they can't help you see better? It's like a wristwatch that can't tell time. Imagine a smartwatch that can't tell time. We should smash it with a hammer and throw it in the garbage. Same for eyeglasses. If the eyeglass can't help you see better, you should smash it with a hammer and throw it in the garbage. You know, it's useless. And so that was kind of this idea that the vision, the glass diverts, the light comes into the eye and comes back around the other side. Here's the IEEE Spectrum article I wrote on that, outlining, among other things, the ITAP principle. So this is the world's first true retinal display. It causes the eye itself to become both the camera and the display. It is not a display, it is not a camera. It's an apparatus that makes your own eye become both a camera and a display. And so that's one of the things that's new and interesting about it. World's first sort of, I guess, cyborg technology. It's making your own eye be the camera and the display. So in 1991, I brought this invention to MIT to found the MIT Wearable Computing Lab. I was accepted at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I brought this. This is, in the words of Nicholas Negroponte, the lab's founder, kind of how I started this project. And so when I brought this invention to MIT, many people found it quite interesting. So people came from industry, various people came. One of the person came and saw this eyeglass and went and kind of built a commercial version of the eyeglass display, and his company got bought up by Google. And so this technology kind of got out there over time period. I started with this welding helmet that helped me see better. In my childhood, I wanted to build better ways of seeing. And so this is some early cumbersome apparatus. And one of the things I invented is HDR, high dynamic range imaging, back about 20 years ago, combining different exposures together. So this is the patent. This is the patent for HDR and some of the early 1992, 1993 publications. So what it does is it combines different exposed images, joins them together, and allows you to see a dynamic range of 100 million to 1. So that's one of the things my glass did for me, is to help me see better. The Mann glass welding helmet, it grabs 120 frames per second in rapid succession, dark, medium, light, over and over again, and it cements them together and allows you to see a dynamic range of 100 million to 1. So you can see the electric arc at the same time as you can see in complete darkness, while also seeing the electric arc of the welding or any other dynamic range. Back in 1999, I invented the contact lens display. This is a patent for it. And so we had contact lens. Then I also invented in 2000, 14 years ago, the implantable eye camera, implantable camera system. So here's the prototype. And so this is what it looks like in a user. And so this is an example of what I call bearable computing. I use the term bearable computing rather than wearable computing because it's body-borne. It can be worn, implanted, or carried, or handheld. It's a broader concept than wearable is bearable computing. And so the invention of the digital glass in 1978 had the light space analysis glass, light space synthesis glass, and these various generations I talked about. The Google Glass is a generation 1 glass in the sense that the camera is outside the eye to one side and feeds the display. Generation 2 glass, I had the eye itself be the camera. Generation 3 glass, I had the focus tracking for infinite depth of focus in Generation 4 glass. And so this is 35 years. These are both Generation 1, and then now I want to talk about Gen 5 glass. Gen 5 glass is a new concept. It's a true 3D extramissive spatial imaging glass called space glasses. And this is it right here. And so there's a laser time-of-flight rangefinder. It's not merely a camera, but it actually knows where everything is in three-dimensional space. It actually gives you a complete three-dimensional map of everything. Now, I'll admit this is cumbersome, but the Meta Pro just looks like much more like ordinary glasses. And so the newer generations of the Meta. This one here sells for $667 at spaceglasses.com. And it's kind of a developer version, if you will. You know, you can get in on the augmented reality with this design. So the Meta Pro is a much more sleek and slender design. And again, the Generation 1 glass, I had this little notifier back in 1978 up in the corner, but then I evolved it into something that actually can help people see better and spatialize and understand the world, and various applications of that sort. Another invention was the wristwatch, the smartwatch. I invented in 1998, 1999. It was on the cover of Linux Journal in 2000, and I presented it at ISSCC 2000, where they referred to me as the father of wearable computing. And this attracted a lot of media attention with the smartwatch. Even though I didn't believe in the smartwatch, in my book I write down that although I invented the smartwatch, I believe it's not the right approach. You have to look away from what you're doing and look at your watch. And I think the right approach is the digital eyeglass. Some of the media around that. The other movement is the quantified self. This is going back 30 years. And so what I had is a bunch of sensors attached to my body to measure and monitor all my physiologicals, blood, oxygen, mental health. This is one of the early apparatus from about 20 years ago. I've got a breath sensor, I've got ECG, EEG, skin conductivity, EVG, electrovisualgram, which is the ITAP feed, and so on. And so all of these physiologicals are captured and transmitted and then stored and processed. This is going back 20 or 30 years. And the other thing I had was dietary intake monitoring, where the glass sees what I'm eating and senses what exercise I'm doing and tells me if I'm getting too fat. Or I was working on an application called a Loomstone, which displays a tombstone that comes close. It constantly estimates the expected value of my date of death and displays it in my head-up display. So I had, while I was jogging, I could see the true waveform of my ECG, EEG, all these instruments, an instrument panel for my body, together with one of the stats was when it thinks I'm going to die. And so if it sees I'm reaching for a gallon of whiskey, it brings the tombstone closer to remind me that that's not the right action to take. I guess that's why I laid off the whiskey, because certainly that tombstone would be coming right up in front of my face if I reached for the whiskey. So the other company we started is Interaxon. We're involved with two companies here. Meta, Mayron Gribbets is the CEO, and Raymond Lowe is the CTO. Raymond Lowe is my PhD student. And this Interaxon is a company my students and I founded, and together Ariel Garten is the CTO, or CEO, and Chris Amity is the CTO. And so we have this product, the Muse, the brain sensing headband. We were the flagship act at the Vancouver 2010 Olympics, controlling all the lights in many of these attractions remotely using the headband. And this is the product we have now with the 7 electrodes, and it pops on around your head, and it's a smart headband that works with iOS or Android, and we have an SDK, and you can develop yourself for it or use it. And much of this work I've had in exhibits and museums around the world. My work's been shown at the MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, Smithsonian Institute, Stedelijk Institute, and so on. And so we've had this long-standing background in the arts as well as the sciences. And I want to venture into the arts because what people keep talking about privacy, and they say, oh, isn't that a violation of privacy? And I said, well, we all know what surveillance is. This is a surveillance camera. Sur means from above, and veiller means to watch. How many here speak French? Quite a few. For the rest of you, surveillance, in English it means oversight. There's an English word, oversight. Now the opposite of oversight is undersight. En français, ça veut dire surveillance. Surveillance, c'est le contraire, surveillance. And so, surveillance is watching from above, and surveillance is watching from below. And so I built this neck-worn sensor camera with a bunch of sensors back in 1998. This is a picture I took in 1998. And so it captures your whole life as you're walking around. You don't need eyeglasses, it just does it from a necklace. And Microsoft took the idea and made it square. And these guys made it actually small, and Momodo and Narrative made a very sleek and slender version of it, which is nicely miniaturized. So now you capture your whole life. And so what does this mean as you're walking around? It means privalence. Privacy and valence. That's what it is. It's not about privacy, it's about privalence. In the arts, one of the things I used to do in my childhood, back when I had lots of time to waste, is to make nice photographic pictures. So I had this row of lights here, and I had it hooked up to my wearable computer, and I moved it through space to say hello world or make various patterns. I did a lot of photography. I did a lot of magazine covers and shots, commercial photography. Here's a full-page ad that I did in Impulse magazine back in 1985 using this vacography. And so I want to briefly explain what a vacography is as an art form, and then explain how it's actually useful for something. So this is an vacograph. So I've got a long exposure photograph of that light moving through space, and it traces out a pattern, and I know where it is in space because the space glasses tell me the 3D coordinates of everything at all times. So I've got this locus of patterns. So we can think of this as like a wire going through space, and then imagine a bead on that wire that I move with my finger in my space glass as a virtual bead. And this is like an abacus. Like beads on wires is like an abacus. And the abacus comes from the Greek word abakos, which comes from the Hebrew word avak, for dust. So if we take this into its form, the natural word is a vacography. I don't know if I've spelled that right, but it's a new word, so I can spell it any way I want, but I've asked a few people. So here's some avacographs. This is Nir and Robert here. So now the avacograph is an object that exists in metaspace. And so it doesn't really exist in the real world, it exists in metaspace. And so it's a space-time continuum. There's space, I have space along here and time along here, and I've got this, say, row of lights here, for example. You can see it's tracing out a space-time continuum. And so why don't we have a volunteer here to trace out a space-time continuum. So we're going to trace out something. Okay, dust. Good. Try it again. Dust. Good. Can you read that? See on the screen there? Okay. Vacograph. So Let me just go here. A vacography. So now, now what I want to do is say, okay, what can we use that for? So you want to wait here for a second, so come back here for a second. And so now we have a surveillance camera there, and we're going to use the vacograph to try to visualize valence flux. Ryan Jansen and I have been working on this notion of valence visualization of valence. So he's going to hold that up to the surveillance camera. Notice it's green when it sees valence. When valence flux hits the lights, they turn green, and when valence flux doesn't hit them, they turn red. So as it comes lower, it traces out a longer cone of light. So put your finger about here, Nina. One finger there, and one finger there to trace out the valence. Okay, now he's going to go up to the top of the camera, so hold your hand steady there, don't move. Right, put the valence stick up towards the camera. See, now it's got less, there's less green because we're into the cone of light. Okay, dust. Okay, that looks pretty good. Try it again to get a better one. Okay. Get back. Good.
And the key thing that we're doing is we're measuring the ability to see. We're not measuring light as it travels through space. We're measuring the ability to see as it travels through space. So that's kind of an interesting new thing.
Okay, so here's an vacograph. There's a surveillance camera here, and we can see valence. Notice when we hold that away, though, where I just show them when it's not seeing the camera. When it's away there, it's red. And bring it out here. Move it towards the camera, and when the camera can see it, the lights that can be seen turn green. Only the lights that are visible to the camera are green along that stick. The lights that are not visible to the camera along that stick are not green. So red is the test color and green is the valence color. So that's a simple idea there.
So how does it know what the camera's seeing?
Wearcam.org/abac.pdf. wearcam.org/abaq.pdf. Complete explanation. It's magic. When you invent something that's 30 years ahead of its time, people think that's crazy. 30 years ago, people said, wow, how can you send email while you're walking down the street? That's amazing. And I said, well, that's not really the point of it. It's a side effect, but it's not the central point. The central point is to see better. The other stuff is just a gimmick. It's icing on the cake. And a lot of people said, wow, that's really cool. You got a computer you can see while you're walking around. And everybody said, oh, that's really neat. And all these industry people said, oh, I'm going to build that. We can sell it. Oh, that's great. Let's sell it. And so they make this gimmick that allows you to sort of see email while you're walking around, but they missed the central point, which was to, what's the central function of eyeglasses? To help people see better. Absolutely missed the bullseye and just focused on this little thing at the periphery that happened to be cute and interesting, kind of a neat gimmick. So again, this is what's central and what isn't. Here's a radio wave that's visible via vacography. With the space glasses, I can see radio waves. So space glasses, you can see radio waves as if they're standing in free space, and you can grab onto and hold radio waves and manipulate them with your hands, make physical and tangible radio waves, which are otherwise invisible. Radio waves, sound waves, light waves, and valence waves. Valence flux is one of the things that we make visible. What is valence? Well, if we look at what the space-time continuum is here, think of this all as a continuum. I've got, internal organ, my clothes, body, whatever it is inside of us. So inside our body, and then you've got a body, then I've got clothes, then I've got cars, buildings, streets, neighborhoods, cities, provinces. Urban means city. Urban design is this axis, but this is a whole continuum of the physical axis. I call it the environment. It contains the environment, which is that which surrounds us, but not is us. The environment, our clothes are not part of our environment. Our skin is not part of our environment. Our body's not part of the environment. But the environment is the technology and the natural world that surrounds us. And so I call this the opposite, which is the environment in Greek, because environment is a Greek word. Environ means circle, and environment means that's what encircles us. In Greek, the opposite is environment. to get, or environment if I want to anglicize it, and then together that we've got the environment is this whole thing. Smart people, smart cars, smart buildings, smart cities, da 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 da. And then we've got the socio-political axis, individual, couple, family, team, community, corporation, nation, world government, space law, of this axis. And so we can think of all these things in the technological axis. So we have the physical sciences from left to right. Coming out of the page we've got the social sciences, and going up the page we've got computer science. And so we can see every piece of technology in somewhere in this space here. If we're naked, we start out here, and then when we put clothes on, we come up the technology axis and a little bit out to this way to a larger scale. Smart streets, wearable computing, and everything. So we can think of this as the environment. Environment is the shaded area here, that which is around us, and on the number line it's that which extends out: car, home, community, streets, cities, and it excludes us. And the environment is the shaded region inside, and so the environment is the whole thing. Together with the environment we have valence. My 6-year-old drew this nice picture. If you look up the word surveillance on the internet, you'll find the Wikipedia article, and her picture comes up first in the Wikipedia article. So it's something simple a 6-year-old can understand. Surveillance means watching from above. Surveillance means watching from below, just ordinary people watching. And so we have these two concepts. Valence in the environment. This is the environment. This is the environment here, and this axis here is valence. Surveillance is way out here, and surveillance is in here. Environment is way out here, and environment is out here. So the whole space, we call it valence in the environment. And I throw in advertising as well, because advertising is a Latin word which means to turn towards. But advertising just means to turn, not necessarily towards or against. So advertising or subvertising or anything else. So we have advertising and valence in the environment. And again, so we have vacography. Now, I just want to say smart worlds and smart environments. The building that we have at the university, there are no longer any hand wash faucets, urinals, or toilets that don't have cameras in them. The pixel count is fairly small. They're only 128 or 1024 pixels, and they're not wired up to the police station to check for contraband, but rather they're simply smart machines watching us and sensing in order to sense the world around us and automatically respond. Again, that's an example of valence. It's not neither surveillance nor surveillance. Politically neutral valence is just watching and sensing. Again, we visualize the valence here using the bug broom. I call this the bug broom because we sweep for bugs with the bug broom. An audio bug broom, Ryan Jansen and I, stand up here, Ryan, everybody can see. Give Ryan a big hand of applause here too. And valence in the environment, so we can sweep this out. An audio bug detector is a speaker with a gain, and it squeals when it gets near a listening device. Our bug broom here changes color when it detects valence flux. Whichever valence the light, it's a magic stick, a magic wand, and you wave it through space, and they come. I've got these wands in different shapes. I've got a circular wand too, like this, and it's got an IMU on it, and it knows where it is, and the space glasses see it. And as you wave it through space, whenever valence flux strikes it, it changes color. And so during a long exposure photograph, you can actually paint out the valence. If there's a surveillance camera, you just wave the wand around like this, and it actually paints it all out. And you can see not only where the cameras are, but what their field of view is. So now this is an example of vacography. It's an example of using the vacograph as a form of visual art, or as a form, from a practical point of view, as a form of data visualization to understand the world around us. To see and understand the world in a whole new way is the Space Glasses mantra. So here's vacographs. They're objects that you manipulate. You grab onto these objects and physically hold them. So the object could be valence flux. You see valence flux coming from valence cameras, sur or surveillance. Grab onto them, manipulate them, move them around, and shape the flux. And just like grabbing onto radio waves is another example, and shape the radio waves. You can grab onto these things and move them around and shape them. So if you have your misfit, you know, it collects data and it forms this data cloud, but now you can see this otherwise invisible cloud with space glasses and grab onto the cloud and manipulate this otherwise invisible cloud of data. So I was wondering what it would be like to have a gantry in our lab. So I visualized valence. So again, here's my magic wand. I've got these I-beams here, I just draw the I-beams with the wand and put them into the space, and again, visualizing them with space glasses. What would it like to have these gantries, move them around? So there's basic principles. Humanistic intelligence is intelligence that arises by having the human being in the feedback loop. There's natural user interface. NUI is a term that I coined back in the 1970s and 80s, and I published this in 2001. Theory of glass, Gen 1, the original Mann glass, Gen 1 to Gen 5. And there's an architecture of one. Clothing is like a building built for a single occupant, and if we think of it that way, clothing is just part of the environment. It's part of this idea that unites, a framework that unites smart people and smart worlds. And so ongoing projects, we're doing various projects and creating this sort of cyborg research organization. We're interested in joining with the best and brightest minds to create kind of an alliance of people working in this area and interested in this area. So we're really trying to build the future. What I saw 30 years ago is this future. Now I'm seeing into the future of aquagraphy and other sorts of visualization with space, extramissive spatial imaging glass, and other related concepts. Yes, thank you. It's been an honor to be here.